Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Deep Dive Podcast. Hope you are doing well and taking good care of yourself. We go beyond the headlines and uncover the truth behind real stories, real crimes, and real consequences. Let's move towards today's topic. Imagine you are standing in a high alpine meadow.
Okay.
You're surrounded by the vast, rolling green peaks of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It is June 14th, 1969.
Completely different era of park management, yeah.
Right. You are on a family camping trip. The air is clear. The Appalachian Trail is just, a few yards away. And everything feels entirely secure.
As it should. I mean, you're with your family.
Exactly. But we know that the wilderness is, it's indifferent to our sense of security. So we are looking at the disappearance of 6-year-old Dennis Martin. In the span of just 5 minutes, a child wearing a bright red shirt stepped behind a bush to play a game with his brother. And he was never seen again.
It's completely baffling.
It is. Our mission today is to examine the environmental factor, the sheer logistical chaos of the 1,400-person search that followed, the baffling scent anomalies,
And those deeply disturbing eyewitness accounts.
Yes, the accounts that make this one of the most debated mysteries in American outdoor history.
I mean, it is a case that fundamentally shifted how agencies approach search and rescue operations.
Right.
When you strip away the urban legends that have sort of attached themselves to this story over the decades, the actual documented facts of that afternoon
They're almost stranger than fiction.
They are. They're far more complex and, frankly, more challenging to resolve than any ghost story. It exposes the absolute limitations of human coordination against the raw geography of the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah, so let's ground this in the physical reality of the setting. The Martin family was visiting from Tennessee, and they had hiked up to a place called Spence Field.
Right?
For anyone who hasn't been there, Spence Field isn't, a manicured park lawn.
Not at all.
It is a high-altitude, bald, a natural grassy meadow right on the crest of the mountains, sitting on the border of Tennessee and North Carolina.
It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful open space, yeah.
Sure.
But it is immediately bordered by extremely dense, unforgiving forest.
And the specific topography of the Smokies is critical to understanding everything that goes wrong later.
How so?
Well, surrounding that open meadow are these massive thickets of rhododendron and mountain laurel. Locals actually refer to them as laurel hells.
Laurel hells, that paints a picture.
It does. The branches grow in these incredibly dense, tangled webs that can be 10 or 15 feet high. You cannot just walk through them.
I've heard you have to crawl.
Yeah, if you step off the trail, you often have to get down on your hands and knees. It is terrain that limits visibility to just a few feet and physically impedes your movement.
And it also acts as a massive sound baffle, right?
Precisely. The
Yeah.
density of the leaves and the uneven rolling terrain, it just swallows acoustics.
Wow.
A shout that might carry for a mile across an open lake might only travel 50 yards in a laurel hell before the sound waves are completely absorbed by all that vegetation.
Which brings us back to Dennis. He's an energetic 6-year-old boy, and he is wearing a very distinct bright red shirt.
A crude detail.
Very crucial. In a landscape of greens and browns, that red shirt should have been a beacon. Okay, let's unpack this. It is late afternoon, and Dennis, along with his older brother and another boy from a neighboring campsite, they decide to play a quick game.
Just normal kid stuff.
Exactly. They're going to sneak up on the adults. The plan is to split up, go into the tree line, and then jump out to startle the parents.
And it is a totally mundane moment.
Yeah.
The adults can see the edge of the woods from where they're sitting. They know the kids are just yards away.
So the two older boys go one way, and Dennis, being the youngest, tries to flank the adults by going another way. He steps just behind a bush on the edge of the field.
Right.
A few moments later, the two older boys jump out. The parents laugh, but Dennis doesn't emerge.
He's just staying hidden, they think.
Right, the parents wait. 1 minute passes, then 2, then 5. The father, Bill Martin, walks over to the bush where Dennis was last seen. He looks behind it. Nothing.
Nothing at all.
He calls his name. Silence. In a maximum window of 5 minutes, Dennis Martin has vanished.
And what's fascinating here is the timeline. It's the most difficult variable to reconcile. A 6-year-old child's stride is very short.
Right, he can't cover that much ground.
Exactly. Moving through a dense rhododendron thicket is slow, exhausting work, even for a fit adult. The geographical radius Dennis could have possibly covered in 300 seconds is incredibly small.
Just a few yards, really.
If he had simply walked further into the brush, his father, who immediately started scouring the perimeter, should have either seen the bright red shirt or heard him moving through the dry leaves and snapping twigs.
But there were no fresh footprints. There were no broken branches indicating someone had pushed heavily into the brush. And there was absolutely no sound of distress, no cry, no shout, just an immediate crushing silence.
The family realizes very quickly that this is not a game of hide and seek on long. They are dealing with a critical missing person incident.
Yeah.
The park rangers are notified, and the initial search actually begins before sunset. But what people often leave out of this narrative is the catastrophic weather event that happens just hours later.
The thunderstorm.
Yes. On the very first night Dennis is missing, a massive, severe thunderstorm stalls directly over the Smoky Mountains.
Just awful timing.
We are talking about nearly 3 inches of freezing rain dumping on the area in a matter of hours. The temperatures absolutely plummeted.
Which completely changes the nature of the crisis. I mean, not only does it turn a rescue mission into a potential recovery mission due to the threat of hypothermia for a small child in a soaked t-shirt,
Right.
but from an investigative standpoint, it is a disaster.
It washed the mountain clean. Any superficial footprints in the mud, any minor disturbances in the soil, any natural scent trails that a dog might easily follow.
Gone.
The torrential rain effectively erased the primary crime scene before daylight even broke.
But despite the weather, the response scales up at a speed and volume that is staggering. Within days, the search for Dennis Martin becomes one of the largest in American history.
It was massive.
It isn't just a few park rangers looking through the woods. The call goes out, and an estimated 1,400 people descend on Spence Field to look for this boy.
And this is where we have to critically analyze the logistics of search and rescue operations of that era. Having 1,400 searchers sounds like a phenomenal advantage.
You'd think more eyes on the ground means a higher probability of finding something.
You would think that. But in practice, it became a massive strategic failure.
Because the vast majority of those 1,400 people were entirely untrained.
Completely untrained.
We are talking about college students from the University of Tennessee, local Boy Scout troops, well-meaning hikers, and off-duty police officers from neighboring towns who just drove up to help.
Exactly. You have hundreds of untrained civilians swarming into an untaped, unsecured wilderness area.
Just walking everywhere.
Instead of moving in disciplined, tightly spaced grids to preserve evidence, they were wandering randomly through the woods. They were shouting, breaking branches, dropping their own trash, and trampling the mud.
Cross-contaminating the entire search radius.
They absolutely did. If Dennis had dropped a piece of candy, or if there was a faint footprint near a stream, it was obliterated by the boots of 1,000 volunteers.
It created tremendous friction between the official agencies, too.
A massive friction.
Because the National Park Service rangers wanted to control the area and conduct systematic sweeps. But because of the bizarre nature of the vanishing, the FBI was brought in very early on under the suspicion that it might be a kidnapping.
Right, which shifts the whole protocol.
And on top of that, they brought in the military, specifically U.S. Army Green Berets.
The inclusion of the Green Berets is a fascinating detail that speaks to how desperate this situation had become. These were Special Forces troops brought in from Fort Bragg.
Which seems extreme for a lost child.
It does, but the rationale was actually quite sound. The dense underbrush and steep ravines of the Smoky Mountains closely resembled the jungle environments these soldiers were trained to navigate.
But even with elite jungle warfare troops running grid searches and helicopters using early thermal imaging to scan the canopy, they found absolutely zero trace of the boy.
Nothing.
Not a shoe, not a thread of his red shirt. Which leads us to the tracking dogs.
Yes, the bloodhounds.
The agencies brought in bloodhounds to try and establish a path. Can you explain how the dogs actually work in an environment that has been rained on and trampled?
Sure, it requires a quick understanding of olfactory science. When a person walks, they are constantly shedding microscopic skin cells, thousands of them every minute.
Just falling off as we move?
Exactly. These cells, combined with sweat and natural oils, form what search and rescue handlers call a scent raft.
A scent raft.
Right. These rafts fall to the ground and attach to vegetation. A trained tracking dog isn't just looking for broken twigs. They are inhaling these specific microscopic organic markers.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Wouldn't the 3 inches of rain have washed all those scent rafts away?
Rain does degrade a scent trail, absolutely, but it doesn't necessarily eliminate it instantly. Sometimes moisture can actually trap the scent closer to the ground.
Oh, I see.
The dogs were given an item of Dennis's clothing to establish his specific scent profile, and the handlers reported that the dogs actually did pick up a trail.
Okay, something.
They tracked Dennis's scent from the edge of the Spence Field campsite, leading a short distance into the tree line exactly where he'd gone to hide.
But the trail didn't slowly fade out, did it?
No, and this is the anomaly that still frustrates investigators today. A typical scent trail dissipates gradually.
The dog gets confused.
Right, the dog will start circling, confused, picking up a trace here and there before finally losing it.
Yeah.
But in this case, the handlers noted that the trail stopped abruptly.
Just ended.
At a very specific geographical point, the scent simply terminated.
As if he stopped touching the ground entirely.
That is the implication. When a scent trail ends instantly, without a gradual fade, handlers are trained to consider vertical extraction.
Vertical extraction, meaning going up.
Did the person climb a tree? Did they fall off a sheer cliff? Or were they physically lifted off the ground and carried away?
Which transitions us to a piece of evidence that, for decades, has been the most debated aspect of the entire Dennis Martin case.
The Harold Key sighting.
Yes. While the 1,400 people were grid searching Spence Field, a completely separate piece of information was trying to make its way to the command center. This comes from the Harold Key family.
And that sighting is arguably the most crucial and certainly the most chilling variable in the investigation.
The Key family was also visiting the park that day, but they weren't at Spence Field. They were hiking in an area near Rowan's Creek.
Which is a fair distance away.
Right. It's roughly 5 to 7 miles away from where Dennis vanished, depending on the exact route you take through the rugged terrain. According to Harold Key, his family was walking near the water when they heard something awful.
The specific phrasing Harold Key used in his official report was a sickening scream.
A sickening scream echoing down the mountain. The Key family naturally stops and looks up toward the steep ridge where the sound came from, and what they reported seeing was highly unusual.
Very unusual for that part.
Yeah, they saw a man hiding in the brush. Harold Key described him as a rough-looking man, unkempt, moving quickly and evasively through the deep woods, actively avoiding the established trails.
Which immediately flags as suspicious to anyone who knows the area. Hikers in the Smokies stick to the trails because off-trail navigation is punishing.
Because of the Laurel Hills.
Exactly. Someone moving rapidly through the brush is either incredibly lost or deliberately trying to avoid being seen.
But it is what the man was carrying that changes the entire complexion of the case.
Yes.
Harold Key reported that the unkempt man was carrying an object slung over his shoulder. Because of the distance and the dense trees, Key couldn't make out definitive facial features, but he noted 2 highly specific details.
The size and the color.
First, the object over the shoulder appeared to be the size and shape of a small child. Second, the object was brightly colored. It was red.
A red object, exactly the color of the shirt Dennis Martin was wearing when he stepped behind the bush.
It's terrifying.
When you overlay that sighting with the abrupt termination of the dog's scent trail, it presents a deeply disturbing narrative.
But wait, how does a kidnapping theory work geographically? The Key family was miles away from Spence Field. Dennis vanished in a 5-minute window. Could someone really grab a child, leave no trace, and cover miles of rugged mountain terrain that quickly?
That is the primary counter-argument the Park Service used to dismiss the Key sighting at the time.
Just doesn't fit the clock.
The timeline is incredibly tight. For a man to abduct a child from Spence Field and reach the Romans Creek area when the Key family saw him, he would have had to move with almost superhuman speed through some of the most difficult terrain in North America.
Furthermore, we run into the tragedy of 1969 communication technology. The Key family hears the scream and sees the man, but they don't have cell phones.
No instant updates.
They have to hike all the way back out of the park, drive to a ranger station, and physically file a report.
And by the time the report reached the FBI and the park rangers coordinating the search at Spence Field, days had passed.
The storm had hit.
The heavy rains had already washed the Rowan's Creek area. When investigators finally went to the location where Harold Key saw the man, they found no footprints, no broken brush, and no rough-looking man.
He was just gone.
His identity was never established. He became a ghost in the investigation.
The FBI ultimately concluded there was insufficient evidence to confirm a kidnapping, while the Park Service leaned toward other explanations. So let's critically analyze the three main theories that investigators and outdoorsmen still debate today.
Okay.
Let's start with the natural environment. Theory number 1, an animal attack. We know the Smokies have a dense population of black bears and occasionally predatory cats. Could a predator have taken Dennis?
It is the most common assumption when someone vanishes in the woods, but a rigorous look at the physical evidence heavily discounts it. Predator attacks are fundamentally violent, chaotic events.
But wouldn't a mountain lion drag its prey up into a tree or away from the trail? Could that explain the lack of ground evidence or the abrupt end of the scent trail?
It is a fair point regarding feline predators, as they do cache their prey. But even a stealth ambush leaves secondary signs.
Right, there has to be a struggle.
There would be an initial strike zone. We would expect to see deeply disturbed foliage, claw marks in the dirt, or a dropped shoe. More importantly, an animal attack almost always results in blood or torn clothing snagged on thorns as the victim is dragged away.
And we had thousands of people looking.
Remember, we had 1,400 searchers, Green Berets, and helicopters looking for a bright red shirt. In 50 years, no one has ever found a scrap of red cloth, a belt buckle, or a fragment of bone in the immediate vicinity or the surrounding canopy.
Add to that the acoustic element. You mentioned earlier how sound is baffled by the Laurel Hells, but an animal attack generates a specific kind of sustained noise.
It does.
Screams, growls, the thrashing of underbrush. The Martin family was sitting mere yards away. They heard absolutely nothing in that 5-minute window.
Exactly. The total silence makes an immediate, lethal animal attack highly improbable.
Let's move to theory number 2, exposure. Dennis simply got lost. He stepped behind a bush, got disoriented, walked in the wrong direction, and ultimately succumbed to the freezing rainstorm that night.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, statistically, wandering off is the fate of most missing hikers. But again, we have to look at the density of the search grid versus a 6-year-old's physical capabilities.
Right, a 6-year-old boy isn't hiking 10 miles in a few hours through dense rhododendrons.
He isn't. His travel radius is confined. And within that confined radius, the park was subjected to one of the most intense overlapping grid searches in history.
With dogs and helicopters.
A lost, terrified child in the woods behaves in predictable ways. They cry out, they drop things, they seek shelter under rock overhangs or in hollow logs.
They leave a trace.
To accept the exposure theory, you have to accept that a small boy managed to evade 1,400 sets of eyes, highly trained tracking dogs, and thermal aerial scans, and tucked himself away so perfectly that not a single trace of his existence has been uncovered in half a century of subsequent hiking and park maintenance.
It defies the statistical success rate of such massive search operations, which leaves us with the darkest of the three, and the one the FBI initially pursued. Theory number 3, abduction. Someone was waiting just out of sight, grabbed him, and took him away.
It is the only theory that accounts for all the anomalous variables.
It fits the missing footprints.
It perfectly explains the total lack of footprints, because he was carried. It perfectly explains the tracking dog's scent trail that abruptly stopped, indicating vertical extraction. And of course, it aligns with the Harold Key sighting of the rough-looking man carrying a red, child-sized object.
But as we discussed, the geography and the timeline make it incredibly difficult to swallow. And the lack of concrete proof is maddening.
It really is.
The sighting was from a distance, the man was never identified, and no suspect was ever named. Without physical evidence, the abduction theory remains the most logically consistent yet tragically unconfirmed.
Which leaves the agencies at a stalemate. The National Park Service generally maintained that Dennis likely wandered off and perished in the severe weather, while many of the FBI agents who worked the case remain convinced he was taken.
And that is the chilling reality we are left with. It has been over 50 years. The case of Dennis Martin is still officially open, but it remains entirely unsolved.
It haunts the park.
It does. Even today, if you hike the Appalachian Trail near Spence Field, the locals still talk about it. They remember the story of the energetic little boy who stepped into the trees to scare his family and vanished into a void.
And, the structural changes to search and rescue protocols, limiting civilian access to preserve crime scenes, standardizing communication, those are a direct result of the failures in this case. But that offers little comfort to the family.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think examining a case like this strips away the romanticism we often attach to the outdoors.
We take it for granted.
We do. We view national parks as massive, curated playgrounds. But a mystery of this depth reminds us of the profound indifference of the wilderness. It shows us that nature is vast, it is secretive, and it does not yield its answers simply because we demand them.
Very true.
One minute you are laughing in an alpine meadow, and the next you are facing a reality that 1,400 people, military intervention, and 50 years of technology cannot resolve.
This raises an important question, and it is something I want you to critically evaluate based on the facts we've explored today. Think back to that 5-minute window and the abrupt termination of the scent trail. If an animal didn't drag him away because there was no physical evidence, and he didn't wander off because he would have been found in the grid searches, the scent strongly implies he was physically lifted off the ground right at the edge of that field.
The vertical extraction.
Yes. Yet not a single sound, not a snapped branch, not a gasp, not a cry for help was heard by the adults sitting just yards away.
Nothing at all.
How does a 6-year-old child get scooped up and carried away into a dense, tangled laurel hell in complete, utter silence? It leaves you to wonder what exactly is lurking just beyond the tree line, watching and waiting during those quiet moments when we feel the most safe.
This was all for today. Stay happy, stay safe, comment your views down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you next time with another story in Deep Dive.